All right, joining me right now to discuss this is Congressman Ted Lieu. He's a Democratic representative from California and a member of the House Foreign Affairs and Judiciary Committees. Good to see you, Congressman. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you, Fredricka.
All right, well, let's talk about that first, actually, since, the president just a short time ago at Camp David decided to come out talking about a range of things. And you were part of an opinion piece in Time magazine this week where you said the president is putting the world in danger with his threats against North Korea. Today, the president seeming to be saying that that tough talk that he has had in the region has been quite influential, and that actually South Korea has been very grateful for that. So, Congressman, does the president have a point?
No, he does not. The reason we wrote that op-ed, and keep in mind Dr. Weininger is an expert on nuclear weapons in North Korea, is to show that throughout our history, military force and the threat of military force has actually not stopped multiple countries from getting nuclear weapons, such as China, Russia, Pakistan, India, and so on. What stops a nuclear weapon from being used is deterrence. So we could stop the use of nuclear weapons, but it's very difficult to get a country to denuclearize through military force, and that's what we're trying to point out. And the threats of causing a nuclear war on the Korean Peninsula are simply outrageous. That's not something the president should be urging.
So these talks scheduled for as early as Tuesday between South Korea and North Korea, how hopeful are you about them?
I'm hopeful, and keep in mind, just based on the timeline, it was the North Korean leader in a speech that offered to have talks with South Korea. And the hotline that they have now opened was also opened up in 2015. These are encouraging signs, and we need to use diplomacy. I'm a former active duty military member, and we're taught that military force should never be the first option. So we got to use economic sanctions and diplomacy to try to ratchet down tensions in North Korea. And
South Korea's leader says while he is all for the talks and he's hoping for something optimistic, it doesn't mean that militarily they will step back or they will be at ease. Is that wise?
Well, keep in mind, the South Korean president has repeatedly stated that there's not going to be any war on the Korean Peninsula without the consent of South Korea. They've been pushing back on Donald Trump's comments, urging a nuclear war, urging the use of force in the Korean Peninsula. So the South Korean president is very clear. He wants to explore diplomacy. I also support that. And I support Rex Tillerson, who also wants to explore diplomacy in North Korea.
And then, Congressman, let me get your take on this new book, The Fire and Fury, which is, just flying off the bookshelves everywhere and is now a bestseller on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. So these explosive allegations about the president, his mental fitness, his administration, what elements of the book or what you've learned of from the book, if you haven't had a chance to read it, in one night, what most concerns you?
What most concerns me are people within the president's inner circle, within his administration, that all have a very similar view, which is basically that the president is unfit for office. And it's not shocking because we see some of his disturbing tweets and his behavior and his actions, but it is making America look foolish. It's also wasting federal resources. Keep in mind, he created an entire voter fraud commission to explore the ridiculous claim that 5 million people voted illegally. Then he disbanded it this year when they couldn't substantiate that ridiculous claim. So we have this administration exploring all sorts of issues that don't need to be explored. We need to work on getting the American people better jobs, a better deal, and that's what Democrats are working on.
And then prior to the release of this book, Fire and Fury, a Yale psychiatrist also met with several members of the House and for a briefing on kind of an assessment of the behavior of the president. And that psychiatrist, saying while she didn't examine him, she really was informing. It was more of an informative kind of briefing. Do you have concerns about how that, played out, or the assessments from afar from these mental health experts?
So I'm not a mental health professional, and I can't comment on whether the president has mental health issues or not. But again, I'm seeing what everybody else is seeing, which is behavior that is not fit for the grand office of the president. And when you have the president of the United States threatening nuclear war with North Korea, a regime that's already paranoid. That is not only shocking, it is really not good for American foreign policy, and it puts our troops at risk. So you're seeing consequences from the president's actions, which is why we need more checks and balances on this president. And in November, the voters get to decide if they want to change the makeup of Congress.
Are you disappointed that it seems as though there are very few Republicans who are willing to be part of that checks and balances, this while the president is flanked by GOP leadership today at Camp David, says no collusion, no crime, I'm not being investigated. How do you assess all of that?
The President of the United States is lying. There's actually been 2 crimes that we know of because 2 Trump campaign officials pled guilty to them, Michael Flynn and George Papadopoulos. Another 2 officials have indictments pending against them. So it's clearly there are crimes. There's also collusion of lower-level Trump campaign officials, such as George Papadopoulos. The only issue is how far up did that go within the Trump campaign, and that's what Special Counsel Mueller is investigating.
Congressman Ted Lieu, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.